three different factors that are important when you're evaluating property. This first one being RV factor, the debt coverage ratio, and cap rate. So RV factor is the simplest, easiest thing, and that's your first filter. You only need to know two pieces of information. How much is it rent for? What's the value of the property? If I have $700 of rent and I have a $100,000 property, I have a 0.7 RV factor. That's the lowest number you want, okay? Most of the properties you want to buy are going to be greater than that, 0.9, maybe 1, maybe 1.1. So if I have here's the test, I have a $150,000 property and I want a 1 point RV factor, how much is the rent? 1,500, exactly, right? See how that works? Pretty simple. Excuse me. If you find that they want $300,000 for that $1,500 a month, right? Now instead of being a 1.0 RV factor, I have a 0.5, right? It's probably not good enough. The one caveat I have in there is don't make it like, man, this has got like a 2.0 RV factor, I should just buy it. Because most of those properties are in ghettos. I mean, they're literally in, areas that you're buying a house for $30,000, $40,000 and it's renting for $600 a month. So it looks great until you pay for all the property damage and the evictions and all the other stuff that goes along with it. But it is a good first filter, right? Because if it doesn't have that number, you can probably pass on and continue to look for properties that are. The second one is the debt coverage ratio. And the debt coverage ratio is how much more income after expenses do I have to cover the actual mortgage payment on the property, right? And I want it to be 25% more. So if I have a $1,000 mortgage, I want a $1,250 net operating income. Net operating income is gross rent minus all your expenses, right, before the mortgage. And I want it to be 125%, right? It's the only one of these three numbers you can actually fix, and you fix it by making a larger down payment, right? Because I can lower the mortgage, the rent stays the same, and so my debt coverage ratio automatically goes up. Problem with paying more down is you can buy less properties, number one, right? Number two, you're creating more equity for a lawsuit, so you're less asset protected. Number three, your rate of return goes down because you're less leveraged, right? So there's all kinds of benefits by having high leverage properties that you lose when you have to increase it. But again, if you have a 0.7 or higher RV factor, probability is you'll have a 1.25 debt coverage ratio too. That'll work. And then the third one are cap rates. And cap rates is just the rate of return if I had no mortgage at all. I pay cash for the property, right? So I still have, management and maintenance and vacancies and all the other expenses to get to that net operating income. Multiply that times 12 divided by the cost of the property. I want it to be 5% or greater, right? Why 5%? Because property is a hassle, right? And I want to get paid for that hassle, right? Ideally, it'll be more, right? And when you take a 5% cap rate and you put an 80% mortgage on the property, your rate of return is going to go up a lot anyway. You're not going to get 5%, you're going to get about 20, okay? So we talked about that. And I'm going to back up here one.
Yeah. The cap rate was NOI divided by the purchase price.
That's what I said.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, NOI divided by the purchase price. Yeah, net operating income divided by the purchase price. I did the monthly, I multiplied it times 12 because you got to get the annual, right? And then you divide it by the purchase price. And the spreadsheet I showed in the first session does all this stuff for you, right? So it calculates all that out. Good question though. And this is just a little, chat, so ask away, right? Ask away. I'm your presenter, right? So I should tell you who I am. I'm a registered financial consultant. I'm an investment advisor representative. I'm also a certified wealth protection planner and a certified Medicaid planner. And I'm a mortgage broker, I'm a real estate broker, I'm a life insurance agent, and a securities fiduciary, right? Yeah, so I do a lot of stuff. And I'm also a co-author of this book with my partner, Mark Kohler. It's my name down here in really small print, but I'm the co-author. Yeah, we're in here. Yeah, this started out as a pretty small book and ended up to be pretty large, but it's got a lot of great information in it. And the reason I point that out is a lot of the things I'll talk about in our presentations and the previous two is in this book. And because I don't have time to go deep on it, if you want to go deep, there'll be a little, and you'll know that it's in the book and you can go deeper that way, okay? Okay, so we're going to talk about, back up, how to manage properties, right? When you live in an area where you can't buy properties to drive to, right? So I live Well, my office is in Newport Beach, California, so Southern California. And I forget what the average value of a property is right now. It's something crazy ridiculous, right? About $1,000 a square foot. Yeah. I was telling somebody here at breakfast, there was a MLS listing for a property in Laguna Beach, which is just south of Newport. And it was about a 400 square foot property, so the size of a nice hotel room, right? And $14.5 million. Right? Now, I don't know how, yeah, 14.5 million. So I don't know how, you do your RV factor on that. How much are you going to get rent on a 400 square foot home, right? And the point is that in a lot of higher priced areas, and Salt Lake's not there yet. This is a great area. You can find properties that make sense. Your son from Chicago, there's a lot of great properties around there. Orange County, the whole county ain't going to work, right? Anywhere from basically San Francisco to San Diego, it isn't going to work. On the East Coast and all that, New York, Boston, isn't going to work. So we got to get out of our markets to own real estate. And because I deal with clients all over the country, I have clients in Hawaii. I have clients who, there's nothing in Hawaii that makes sense, right? Nothing. So they're buying properties in Oklahoma, right? I live in Newport Beach, but I own a property in Park City, Utah, right? 700 miles away. So this is what this part of the presentation is about, is how do you do that, right? How do you go about owning properties in areas where you don't live, okay? All right, so why do we like real estate? We're not going to tell you. Okay. All right, so we're going to jump right into it. I thought I had a slide in here that said why we like real estate. You know why we like real estate? The slide's not here, but why do we like real estate? What's the number one reason we like to own real estate?
For us, it's equity.
Equity or return on your investment, right? It's a return on investment. You put money in, you get a good return on your investment, right? The other reason I like real estate, working with my clients, is all the tax benefits, right? It's one of the most tax efficient investments you can buy, right? You get tax deductions for owning it. You get to defer those taxes forever. It's awesome. It's an investment that you can pass down to generations, right? So your kids, your grandkids, and whatever. And then, the other thing, and again, I wish there were more people in the room, but I think we'd all agree that one of the reasons we like to own real estate is the control, right? Because, I have a lot of my clients' money invested in the stock market. We have no control over that money, right? We just go along for the ride and hope we got on the right boat, right? And if we did, then we make money. And if we didn't, we don't. But with real estate, you get to control much more of your ability to earn money from that investment. So that's another reason people like it. Why don't they like it? It's complicated. It's messy, right? It's expensive. You can't get in it for $1. It costs you lots of money to get into it, right? And I had another reason I can't remember.
I'll give you another reason,
Yes.
and that's if you're buying stocks and the company goes bankrupt, you got a piece of paper.
That's brilliant. And I should have mentioned that too.
But
Your real estate can't go bankrupt, yeah. So what he said was, I'll give you another reason, because if you buy company stock and it goes bankrupt, you've lost it, and you've done nothing wrong. You may be even invested in a good company like Enron, right? Which was a great company, stellar, making money hand over fist, and all of a sudden all that money just evaporates. Now your house can get burned to the ground. You got insurance, right? Your house can be in a real estate market that gets hit by a big, deflation in the value of the property, but in most instances, it doesn't mean you had a big hit in your rent. The rent's going to stay the same. And the secret with real estate is, I said it before when we're talking about acquiring it, the profits in the purchase. If you buy it right, it'll do what you want it to do. If you buy it wrong, you hope for a miracle. Miracles happen. But the other secret with real estate is holding power. It's your ability to own it and hold on to it for a long period of time. Because if you can hold on to it long enough, you can ride out those bumps in the market, and this all along, it's going to provide you rent, and it's never going to file bankruptcy on its own, right? So all of those bad things I was talking about real estate, it's complicated, it's messy, takes a lot of money to do it. All of those things really provide opportunities for us as real estate investors, because if we can control those things, then we can take advantage of all the good things that come with real estate, right? So we like it for those reasons. So So we talked about real estate, we talked about integrating into a financial plan, and now we're going to talk about what we're going to do if we own property outside of our market. So it's a 4-step process. You have to find the properties. That's the hardest part. America's a big country. Got 320 million people living here. We got billions of acres of land. How do you find, you get your little Google map out, start searching for houses? How do you do that? Then you got to finance them, right? Which can be another problem. Again, I'm a mortgage broker. I've funded over $1 billion of home loans in my career, and I'm still funding loans today. It's harder today than ever, right? I mean, actually, I take that back. It was really hard in 2010, and now it's a little bit less hard to do it. But it's still much more difficult than it was before 2008, when we would just give away money, right? Because we wanted to or could. So financing is important. And then you have to implement a property management strategy, which we're going to talk about. Ways to do that using local property managers or perhaps doing it yourself. And then finally finding a tenant and keeping them. This, by the way, is all the stuff that I'm talking about here. This is what FIG does, right? All for you. It's kind of cool. I didn't know that they did all that. I thought they basically did number one, right? But they really have a package so you can come in as an investor, right? And they've done a due diligence. And I'll talk about types of FIGs, but FIG seems to do way more than what I've seen other investment groups out there, right? I think they're more, you hear the term turnkey, right? They're really turnkey, right? They really are. I love it. So first step, sourcing qualified properties. And again, I put the little comment here. Remember, the profit is in the purchase. So use a turnkey provider, like we're talking about. Turnkey providers find those properties for you. They have local sources to start finding those properties and filtering out those tens of thousands of properties, getting them down to a few properties. They have local property managers, which is really important, right? To manage a property remotely by yourself is virtually impossible, but not impossible. Virtually impossible, but not impossible. Virtually, but not totally.
Difficult, but not impossible.
Thank you. Difficult, but not impossible. Because I self-manage my property here in Park City, Utah, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that. You can also use the Google today to look at properties, which I love. Not that you're going to search the United States to find the properties, but once they say, here's a property you can buy, now with Google, I can see that property backs to a railroad track or backs to a school or sides to a busy street. So I get to see all these things that you're never going to see in the photograph that looks so cute with the flowers in the front yard, right? You're not going to see that. So you have the ability to do it. Trulia, other websites. And you also have the ability to look up the schools and see how well they rate. You have crime statistics. You have all this data available to you now that you can do from your bedroom, right? It's all there and available to you. And then the other thing that I like, and this goes back to the tax thing, is you get to travel, right? So when I leave here tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to travel to my condominium in Park City, Utah, right? So even if I wasn't here talking to you today, which makes this a total write-off for me, if I had to go visit my property to do some maintenance on it, right, that whole trip becomes a write-off. So if you own properties in markets that you might like to go visit, maybe it's in Nashville, right? Maybe it's in California even, right? And you wouldn't necessarily buy one in Newport Beach, but maybe you could buy one to get you out there, or Hawaii, whatever. The point is that the travel expenses can help you, again, source the property and give you additional tax benefits as well, right? And there's a lot of rules, again, in the book that we go through in terms of writing off those things. A lot of people ask me, hey, if I go to, if I go to Orange County, California, to look at properties and I don't buy anything, do I still get to write off the trip? The answer is, of course, no. No, sadly, no. If you don't, that doesn't make any difference if you made an offer or you made 20 offers. If you don't actually buy something, that was just a vacation, an expensive one, okay? But if you go and actually end up buying, you can write off the whole trip by the time you're there. So that's how we source properties. We use turnkey providers, again, people like FIG and other sources out there. I have about a half a dozen of them that I work with to help my clients find properties, and that's how we go about doing it. And then once they give us those properties, then we start drilling down on it using my spreadsheet tools that I had in the previous session, right, to help analyze them financially. We use Google and all the other websites to help us look at the other statistics. Now we're talking about financing. I mentioned a few moments ago the benefits of financing, right? So the first benefit is that you get to leverage your money. So if you think about an investment, and it has its own intrinsic risk, right? So real estate, the biggest risk with real estate is that you lose a tenant, right? Now you got to get a new tenant in, so you don't have any income. Everything else you can insure for, floods and fires and, earthquakes even, we can insure for all that stuff. But if you lose a tenant, actually you can get tenant insurance to some degree too. In an apartment, commercial buildings, you can get tenant insurance for properties. But the point is that the investment has its own risk, okay? So by leveraging the property, we increase our rate of return, but we don't increase the risk, the fundamental risk of the investment itself, right? So the risk of having the mortgage is that you have to make that mortgage payment. So how do we mitigate that? We create cash reserves. So for every property we buy, we're going to set aside extra money in cash reserves, because if something does happen, then you'll have the money, right, to keep going. And my rule of thumb there is 3 months, right? 3 months for every property. So if I have 3 months rent for every property, if I have 10 properties, I'll have 30 months of rent sitting in a safe liquid cash reserve account, right? So that if the roof does blow off or the house does burn down or whatever, I have cash reserves to carry me through the downside. Make sense? Okay. Okay, so we like financing it. And I like using long-term financing. Again, when I started in the mortgage business back in '87, the 30-year fixed rate loans were about 15%. Yeah, I know. Sounds horrible, doesn't it? Yeah. And I made the joke in the last session, when rates got below 10%, I announced it to the Board of Realtors and I got a standing ovation. Yeah, because they were so excited. And today I'd be like, actually it's illegal because the hard money loans at 9.99. That's where you stop out. Yes.
I bought my first house at 12%.
12%. Yeah, I bought my first one at 14%, and I was happy to get the loan from Wells Fargo. In all fairness, though, my first house cost $70,000. Right? I mean, that was my first little condo. So my down payment was like $5,000 or something, which I had to sell everything I had in garage sales for months to get the $5,000. I had to sell my piano. That was the hardest thing to sell, But anyway, yeah, that's what you do. You make the sacrifices to get what you want. And so homes were cheaper, mortgage rates are higher. Now mortgage rates are lower, right? So I used to love adjustable loans. And when the market turns again, I'll favor those again. But right now, 30-year fixed rate financing is the way to go. 3 decades at an interest rate under 6% on a non-owner occupied property, that's awesome. Why? Because that interest rate's locked in and your rents are going to go up. Yep. So your rate of return on your investment is going to continue to go up, and you've locked in that benefit. So 30-year fix is the best. The gold standard for 30-year fixed rate loans, of course, is Fannie and Freddie. Fannie and Freddie, after 2008, became very stingy with their money, right? We used to be able, before 2008, give you an unlimited amount of loans, right? You could have as many properties as you wanted with 20% down, and you could do it all day long. No more, right? Now you get your first 4 properties with 20% down. You want to do that, every one of them, 20% down, because you want to use the leverage. Now, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you have to put 25% down, a little bit more, right? You have to increase your down payment, reduce the risk to Fannie and Freddie, but you're tapped out at 10 properties, and you're done with 30-year fixed rate financing unless you're married, right? Because if you get 10 and you get 10, now I got 20 loans, 20 properties, right? And your primary residence doesn't count. Okay, so if you could finagle away, which is where you work with myself, right, to get that primary residence to 0, we can actually get 21 30-year fixed rate loans out of a married couple, right? That's a lot of properties. For most people, that's a lot of real estate. Now, if you go over that, that's what we call sequence of financing. If the third bullet point down there, if we go over that, it doesn't mean you're out of business. It just means you're out of Fannie and Freddie loans. And we have to go to private money investors, which are going to cost you more money. So you just put that into the equation, and if it still works, it works, right? It's not the end of the world. You can borrow money at 9% and still make money in real estate. You can, okay? It just gets less desirable. You need higher cap rates, higher RV factors to cover that debt servicing. Because if you don't have those higher rents to offset the higher interest rate, it's called a positive arbitrage. If you don't have a positive arbitrage, the only way you're going to bail yourself out on that property is if you have that one of those miracles called appreciation, right? And it will bail you out, but it's not a guarantee, right? So it's there, and those are the options. Okay, so 30-year fixed rate, we talked about fixed rate. So financing, I think we got that covered. Any questions? Anyone? Thank you for coming back, by the way. I'm glad we got a couple of you back here. Yes, sir.
So those 10 properties, if you get like a residential property that's over 4 units and it's not commercial, does that count as?
Great question. So if I buy residential properties are considered 1 to 4 units, right? So 5 or more are considered commercial properties, and they don't count. They don't count. You have to disclose that you have them. You have to disclose that you have the debt on the Fannie Freddie application because it still counts in terms of your qualifications, but they don't count as one of the 20. Yeah, yeah. In fact, that's another way we get more loans. We can aggregate a bunch of smaller loans into one big commercial loan, right, and finance the properties. And now we've paid off all of our Fannie and Freddie loans. And now we can go get a whole bunch of new Fannie and Freddie loans, even though we still own the same properties, but we put all those other loans into one commercial loan. That's doable. That's a great question. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Implement a property management strategy. Number 1 rule. This comes under the category of asset protection too. A lot of people, when they buy rental properties, my buddy Kohler say, hey, get an LLC to protect you from the boogeyman and all that kind of stuff. And I say the number 1 asset protection strategy is to be a good landlord, okay? Now, what do I mean by being a good landlord? Screen your tenants. Have a good property manager. Take good care of your property. If something breaks, fix it, right? My little property in Park City, I was terrified initially about renting it. Because I heard all the stories about, you rent it out and all the college kids come in and they trash your house and whatever. And during Sundance, all the wild and crazy people from Hollywood will beat up your property. So my strategy was I didn't rent to them. I didn't rent to those people. How did I do that? Well, I just charged a lot of money for my condo every night. And because I charge a lot of money, the people I rent to are awesome people, right? And they take care of my place. Like it's theirs. You go into my condo and you feel like you went into my home. Why? If you open the junk drawer, everybody's got a junk drawer in their home. I have a junk drawer in my condo. There's batteries in there, there's change, there's duct tape. This is my rental, right? I have a printer and a computer. I have everything that you would have in your home in that home, and people go in there. I even have a wine rack stacked with wine that I keep there. And I'll fill it up at the beginning of the year, and by the end of the year, I usually have more wine than I started with. Because people will buy wine, they'll use some of it while they're there, but they'll buy wine and they'll leave the wine there. They can't take it on the airplane, whatever. And the point is that being a good landlord as a vacation rental owner means making an awesome experience for your tenants, right? And I just want them to walk in there and go, wow, and then just enjoy their trip, right? The whole time they're there. So being a good landlord is important. And it doesn't matter if I'm renting, again, vacation rental by owner or long-term rental, be a good landlord. I think the number 1 mistake that real estate investors make is they delegate too much of the tenant screening to the property manager, okay? Now, this is kind of a double-edged sword, right? So first of all, screening tenants is a hassle. We know that. So you should let your property manager do the bulk of the screening and then get it down to the few candidates that you want to look at, right? And you want to see the credit report, and you want to see the application, and you want to be involved in it, right? I say it's a double-edged sword because when you look at your management contract, and I may have something, I'm going to mention this later, but a lot of the, your property management fee is typically 7 to 10%, right? 7 to 10% of your, of your monthly. However, a lot of them have rent-up fees, right? So, and the rent-up fee could be 1 month's rent, right? So, you have your $1,000 a month property that you're paying $70 a month for, but you're getting $1,000 a month rent. And so if the property manager, for whatever reason, keeps finding a new tenant once a year, they're getting $1,000 for that month that they would have only got 70, right? So you see you're on the wrong side of the equation with that. They're incented to not have a tenant stay. You want them to stay 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, right? That's what you want. So get involved with it. That's part of being a good landlord. So if you're a good landlord, and take care of your property, screen your tenants, get involved with it. You're going to have a much better experience in owning income property from afar. Okay? Make sense? Okay. And then the second level of asset protection is just get good insurance. That's easy. It's easy and it's cheap. Third level is you get a umbrella insurance policy to go on top of that, right? And then when you, depending on the type of property you have, that's where you bring in the LLCs. Because if you have a property that's maybe more risky, Mark has a little story about he has this little meth lab in south side of Chicago. It's kind of a scary area. Yeah, and so, if that meth lab blew up the whole neighborhood, right, which could happen, I'm not think that would happen actually, it's probably, but if it did, it would blow through the insurance policies and the umbrella policies and all those other things. So you have the LLC around it to put a firewall around liabilities going outside of that property. Make sense? Okay. Okay, so now let's talk about property managers. They are your link, right? They're your local link to the property. So of all the things if you think finding a property is hard, finding a property manager is even more difficult, right? Now, I remember when I started in the mortgage business back in '87, the only property managers that were in the real estate offices, that's where we found most of them, were the men and women that couldn't sell any real estate. Right? So they couldn't make any commissions on real estate, so they started, managing properties for a few bucks so they had some money coming in. So you had these guys that really weren't good realtors that were managing the properties, and they weren't very professional with it. Yeah, right? Managing a property manager is very difficult. Again, personal story, I had Deer Valley Lodging initially managing my property in Park City, Utah. Deer Valley Lodging was the premier property manager in Park City until they filed bankruptcy and stole $4 million worth of their clients' money. Yeah, about $6,000 of mine, right? Which wasn't bad compared to what other people lost, right? So this is what I'm talking about, the golden rule, okay? So this isn't the one you learned in church, right? This is the one you learn in finance, which is the one who has the gold rules, okay? Meaning whoever has the money wins, right? Or is in charge, or has control, or has the power. So what do I mean by that? Most property management agreements, the money goes from the tenant to the property manager to you, okay? So what's the problem with that? A whole bunch of them.
They've got your money.
They've got your money, and for a long period of time. And you don't know when they got it. And you don't know anything except you see that statement 45 days later, right, that the rent came in and, a light bulb burned out or a switch had to be replaced or you don't know anything, right? So instead, what I recommend is that the tenant pay you the rent, right? And you can do this through direct deposit. They're not really sending you a check. You can do that, but direct deposit. First benefit of that is you're going to be notified the second that deposit hits your account. You know when the rent was paid on the 1st of the month or the 2nd of the month or the 16th of the month when it's late. Because again, the property manager gets the late fee, right, if he doesn't tell you about it, right? He collects the late fee, but he just gives you the full rent. Where you were entitled to it, you don't even know about it, right? Or, even worst case, they might have a buddy or somebody in the property and a month or two goes by or, they were short a little bit this month and so they're going to make it up for it next month. You just don't know. But if that check goes from them to you, right? And I would actually advocate getting to know your tenants. Right? A lot of absentee landlords don't want to get involved with it. They feel that it's exposure. You may not want to necessarily let them know where you live per se, but again, if you're being a good landlord, who cares, right? They're not going to come and go after you if you're being a good landlord. But if you can create a personal relationship with those tenants, they're going to treat your property like it's yours. It just happens to work that way. People will. This summer, I had somebody stay in my condo, and they had their kids there, and they bought these little protectors for their little kids, right? Well, they left them all in the condo. They asked me, can I leave all those protectors for you and all the kids' toys we bought, and we're going to come back next summer, and you can, this is what they do for you, right? So, get to know your tenants, right? He who has the gold rules. Now, 99% of the property managers will not want to do that. They want to take your money. They want to keep your money. And I would say, I don't know what percentage, but a lot of them are perfectly honest and it's perfectly legitimate, right, for them to do that. But you don't have control. The other reason I like you to take the money and control it is anybody in the room a real estate professional? Anybody? Anybody know what that means? I know there's only a handful of people here. So a real estate professional is not a licensed realtor. It's just somebody that their primary work is to be actively involved in real estate. Now, that doesn't mean that you're fixing toilets and changing light bulbs. It means that, guess what? You're helping to select the tenants that are coming into your property. You're collecting the rent from the property. You're looking at your books from the property. You're authorizing the expensive repairs, right? You're authorizing all this. You're involved with it. And the benefit of doing that, husband and wife especially, is if one of you does that and the other one makes a lot of money, the passive limitations on write-offs for real estate, which is $25,000 a year, goes away. So now I can make $1 million a year, write off $1 million of passive losses, and pay no income tax on it. Right? So that's a huge opportunity for couples. And you can't do that unless you're actively involved in the real estate. So that's just another reason, again, to collect that check up front. Make sense? Okay. I learned that the hard way. Thank you, Deer Valley Lodging. Okay. And then lastly, consider self-management. I said, how do we say? You said it really well. It's difficult but not impossible, right, to do this. So I have a key lock, a cordless key lock on my condo, right? Which is the most awesome thing ever, because I was skiing down in Southern California and the tenants were checking into their condo, called me up, I forgot what our combination was, and I could just take my cell phone and go, boom, the door's open, right, remotely, and give them, then text them the condo combination. So I don't have a property manager anymore. I have a crew that does my cleaning, that they go in and I pay them extra to do an inspection. That was another thing I learned. So the cleaning crew charges $80 to clean the condo, and I give them another $30 to walk through everything. I have a checklist that they take a picture of it, they send me the checklist, so they know what to do and they know what to look for, and and they get basically a 40% bonus, a tip, right, for just looking around and telling me what's going on. And same thing with the relationship. Somebody during Sundance, there's all kinds of people in every condo in our complex. So some of my plates end up in another condo, right? But my housekeeper noticed that, and she went and got them out of the other condo, right? Isn't that awesome? Yeah. So self-management is possible, right? It's about getting involved. It's about being good and being involved with your property. Okay. So, good. So we're almost going to wrap up here, which is good because I only have 10 minutes left. So you missed the first 2 sessions. Listen to them. We used a tool called the Shopper. The Shopper is a spreadsheet that allows you to filter through lots of properties and help you evaluate them financially, whether they're good or bad rentals, right? Even if you own them now, right? Or if you're shopping for new ones. The second one, the Transformer, is where we took a look at properties you owned, including your primary residence. We looked at money in your 401k and your savings and other accounts and said, what if we could redeploy that money and put it into a better position for you, using real estate as the example. And the Transformer is the tool we use to do that. The 3 takeaways from this little session then is that money trapped in 401k plans can be freed up. How? We use the in-service non-hardship withdrawal privilege, or we use a $50,000 maximum loan. We can borrow money out of a 401k. It's not trapped forever. And this is the wrong thing. No, the first one's the wrong thing. But leverage can improve your rate of return and give you asset protection. But then finding, acquiring, and managing a real estate remotely requires a team. You can't just do it by yourself. You got to have some people involved with it, but you can control that situation if you get involved a little bit more yourself. And trust me, it's worth the effort. It really is. Okay? So with that, I'm going to give you a couple more things. This is a little booklet I put together that I'm actually going to get some stuff from the guy speaking next door and add to it. But it's a how to evaluate income property and prioritize checklist that'll give you links to how do you get school zone, crime statistics, rents, all these different things. It's all in this little document, so I'll send that out to you. And then also, we have a few more copies of this book, which again, Mark and I co-authored. If you're interested in those, we have those for $20 and I'll autograph it for you, okay? And I think Mark may be already left, but if not, we can get him too. And then we have the Financial Independence Toolkit that you're going to get. Financial Independence Toolkit is pretty cool. I wanted to be able to give away something that would help everybody. So the toolkit helps you budget. It helps you create a cash reserve account that you can actually get a good rate of return from, but it's still safe and liquid. And then there's 12 financial guides, caring for elders, Social Security, Medicare, college planning, just a whole variety of really good financial guides. Those are free. And then lastly, is again, I'm a consultant. I charge $265 an hour for my consulting time, and hopefully some of you will need that. But everybody, because you're here, and if you, this is your ticket, you turn this into Corey, you're going to get 30 minutes from me for free, right? For being here, right? So with that, I've concluded my 3 presentations. Do you have any questions, folks? You've been great. Yeah, for a small group, this is great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, this is kind of like one-on-one, right? Okay. Well, then, thank you for attending. Thank you for coming to the workshop, and we'll see you all tomorrow.